Imagine you are boarding a plane for a routine flight. It is March 2020. China Eastern Flight 564 is taking off from New Delhi, going to Shanghai. The 200 passengers on board are unaware that this will be the last direct passenger plane between two giant nations for over 4.5 years. This chapter opens with the eerie final journey of this plane, a flight that seemed so normal. For years to come, the air travel route between India and mainland China would remain silent, a quiet space in the sky where planes once flew daily. This situation was not only surprising, but also unprecedented in modern times. India and China, two massive countries, are home to about 1/3 of all the people on Earth. It seems strange that they would have no direct flights. Logically, such large populations should mean many travelers and frequent planes. Indeed, in December 2019, there were about 539 direct commercial flights every single month between these two nations. But then, this number dropped suddenly to absolute zero. These two powerful nations completely stopped their aerial connections, effectively severing their ties in the sky for a long, unexplained period. The first reason for this sudden halt in connectivity was the global COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, both India and China, like many other countries, banned all international arrivals to slow the spread of the virus.
This made sense then. However, after about 2 years, India began allowing regular international travel again. China followed suit a year after that, opening its borders to the world once more. Most flights to and from other countries slowly began to fly again, bringing people and goods across continents. Yet the planes between India and China remained on the ground. This long freeze was no longer just about public health. There was a hidden, much deeper reason for this lasting silence in the skies. As we move forward in this story, we will be transitioning from understanding a simple health-related pause to uncovering the true, underlying cause of this long and complete shutdown. What dark and violent event in remote freezing mountains caused these two nuclear-armed powers to lock their doors to one another? What happened high up in the desolate Himalayas that made such a deep cut in their relationship, stopping all direct planes and causing years of diplomatic and economic strain? The answer lies not in a virus, but in a serious and bloody clash that changed everything between them, making their shared sky silent for years. 2. A big fight. In June 2020, a problem began in the Galwan Valley. Indian soldiers went to a disputed area. They went to check if Chinese soldiers had moved back, as they had promised. But Chinese soldiers had built a new structure there. Indian soldiers began to take it apart. A big fight then started. This fight was strange.
A 1996 rule banned guns and bombs near the border, so they used stones, sticks, and clubs to fight. This confrontation was very bad. It was the first time in 45 years soldiers had died there. 20 Indian soldiers lost their lives. Many Chinese soldiers also died, estimated between 35 and 43. Each country blamed the other for starting the fight. This border has a long, difficult history. It is the longest territorial dispute in the world. The eastern part has the McMullen Line, which China never accepted. In the west, there is a large, dry area called Aksai Chin. India says it owns Aksai Chin, but China controls it. This high desert area is very cold and inhospitable, with little air to breathe, but it holds an important road for China to move soldiers. A short, deadly war broke out here in 1962. Today, there is an invisible line called the Line of Actual Control, or LAC. This line is unofficial, and both countries do not fully agree on its exact location. There is no safe zone between the armies. Because of this, soldiers from both sides often meet face to face. They patrol the same spots, each claiming the land. This often leads to tense moments. The tragic deaths in Galwan Valley changed everything. Decades of uneasy peace were shattered. It showed the border could be very dangerous, even without guns. The freezing, dark mountains became a place of deep sadness and anger. After the clash, the situation worsened quickly.
Both governments sent many more soldiers to the region. Tens of thousands of angry troops and heavy tanks arrived. China quickly built new roads and permanent living places for many soldiers in Aksai Chin. This escalation happened very fast. With so many armed forces now on both sides, how close were these two large nations to an all-out war? 3, money and rules. After the border fight, India quickly decided to punish Chinese businesses. This was a direct retaliation for the violence. India banned hundreds of popular Chinese apps, like TikTok, from its markets. They also stopped a big Chinese phone company, Huawei, from providing services in their telecommunications networks. India even started investigations into many Chinese companies for not following tax rules. India also made it very difficult for Chinese citizens to get visas. They stopped online applications, making everyone apply in person. This caused the number of visas issued by India to Chinese people to fall from about 200,000 in 2019 to only about 2,000 in early 2024. Also, reporters from both countries lost their visas, meaning no Indian journalists worked in China and no Chinese journalists worked in India. But a strange paradox quickly appeared. Even with all these harsh bans and restrictions, India still deeply relied on China. India imports a massive $121 billion worth of goods from China every year. This amount is larger than what India imports from Russia, the United States, and the UAE combined.
However, China imports only $18 billion worth of goods from India. This huge difference shows a clear asymmetry in their trade relationship. India needs Chinese imports for very important industries. These include electronic parts, vital ingredients for pharmaceutical medicines, solar panels, and heavy industrial machines. It is very hard to quickly change these supply chains, which have been built over many decades. Chinese money invested in Indian startup companies also faced severe problems. India started reviewing all Chinese-backed funding. This forced major Indian tech companies, some of which had received billions of dollars from Chinese investors, to change who owned them. The message was clear. Chinese money was no longer welcome in India's fastest-growing business areas. Many Chinese firms, including phone makers, found it hard to operate. Some even moved their regional work to other countries like Vietnam or Bangladesh. This situation created a big question. Can a country truly cut off its biggest trading partner to make a political statement, or will such actions end up harming its own economy in the process? 4. 2 different ways. While direct flights stopped, India and China began to move in very different directions. Why was China's international travel shrinking, But India was building many new airports and buying more airplanes. This big change showed a lot about their different futures and how their economies were moving.
China's economy, which used to grow very fast, started to slow down significantly. People spent less money, and international travel from China became very depressed. For instance, flights from China to the United States and Canada went down by 63%. Flights to France decreased by 57%, and even to Taiwan, they dropped by 70%. Beijing Capital International Airport, which was once the world's second busiest airport in 2019, fell far down to 23rd place by 2023. This was also because many Western airlines could not fly over Russian airspace, forcing them to take longer, more expensive routes that bypassed China. This made flights to China less common and more costly. In sharp contrast, India was experiencing a huge boom in travel and new building projects. Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport climbed from 16th busiest globally in 2019 to the 10th busiest in 2023. Since 2014, India more than doubled its total number of airports, going from 74 to 148. The government spent a large amount of money on new railways and roads, improving the country's travel infrastructure. India's population also continued to grow, officially becoming larger than China's population, which was starting to shrink. Indian Airlines aggressively expanded to meet this rising demand.
In 2023, for example, the Indian airline Indigo made a very large order for 500 Airbus A320 aircraft. With only about 3% of the Indian population having ever flown, the chance for future aviation growth in India was huge, pushing its economic trajectory upwards. This split created a lot of human pain and difficulty. Many students, business travelers, pilgrims, and families found themselves separated. A trip that once took about 5 hours by direct plane now became an exhausting and expensive 10-hour odyssey. This was because nearly 60% of all India-China travel had to go through other places like Hong Kong, Singapore, Bangkok, or Dubai. Chinese students studying in Indian universities, who were once a growing group, found it almost impossible to travel home for holidays and then return to their studies. Indian business people needing to check factories or meet partners in cities like Shenzhen or Chengdu faced journey times that made frequent travel practically impossible. These long and costly detours deeply affected many people's lives and their ability to stay connected. The two nations were clearly building very different air travel systems and facing different demographic futures. With India's skies getting more and more crowded with planes, and China's skies remaining quieter, who truly had the advantage in this unusual standoff?
Who would be the first to change their mind and find a way to reopen the direct air links? 5. Building new roads. The story returns to the cold, high mountains, where a silent, relentless war of concrete and steel was happening. Both India and China were building many new things along their shared, disputed border. This was a race to build and control land. Satellite pictures showed amazing changes. China was quickly building new villages close to the border. These were not just simple towns. Experts saw them as dual-use outposts, meaning they could be used by both civilians and the military. They helped China make its territorial claims stronger. These new military camps had special oxygen systems, hidden bunkers, and places for drones. This showed that China planned to stay there forever, not just for a short time.
China also built roads and barracks for up to 120,000 soldiers in the Oxai Chin region, making their presence permanent. India was also building at a very fast pace. It had learned a hard lesson from the past. Bad roads made it weak in a fight, so India put a lot of money and effort into building. One big project was the Sela Tunnel. It went through a mountain in Arunachal Pradesh. This tunnel allowed soldiers to get to faraway military positions all year round. Before, heavy snow blocked the old mountain roads for many months.
India also built new bridges, small airports, and roads that could be used in all weather across its part of the Himalayan frontier. Both countries had a strong feeling, use it or lose it. This meant if they did not build and stay in an area, they might lose their claim to it. This idea pushed them to build even in places where the air was very thin and hard to breathe. The air in these high mountains was so thin it made people tired quickly and made it hard to think clearly. Chinese soldiers had effectively blocked Indian soldiers from going to patrol points they used to visit often in areas like Depsang Plains and Demchok. India believed these areas were its own undisputed territory. The temporary safe zones that were agreed upon earlier had become new de facto realities. China was now very comfortable in these new positions. This building race created a strange situation, a geopolitical stalemate. China had made its position strong along the border with huge buildings and now wanted things to go back to normal, but India would not agree easily. India saw China's actions as taking land. India said that first the border must be stable and all soldiers must move back to how things were before 2020. Only then could normal business restart. As both armies built their positions forever and refused to step back, it seemed the border would never fully open again. What could possibly break this strong, frozen deadlock? 6. A surprise change.
An unexpected change came from far away, shaking up the world. Donald Trump became the President of the United States again. His return caused big changes in global trade. He put new heavy tariffs on Indian goods. These taxes were 50% on many Indian products. This happened in August 2025. The U.S. said it was because India kept buying oil from Russia, even with Western rules against it. These new taxes quickly changed how India saw its friends in the West. India's good relationship with Washington had been growing for a long time. They worked together with countries like Japan and Australia. But now this relationship suddenly felt less strong. If the United States could put such big taxes on a close friend, India felt its trust in Western allies was shattered. The idea that America was India's most secure economic partner needed to be thought about again. China saw this big geopolitical event as its chance. Beijing quickly showed that it was watching. China said that India's problems with President Trump were a good time to show that China could be a more steady and helpful economic partner. Chinese officials spoke of working together and how important it was for big countries in the global south to have a fair world order. For Prime Minister Modi, this situation gave him a new reason to act. It was usually hard to make friends with Beijing again because of what happened at the border.
Many people in India still felt angry about the conflict, but now, with problems growing with America, it became easier to talk about having more friends. Making a new rapprochement with China was not just about what was happening in the world. It could also show that India makes its own choices and is not tied to one group of friends. This was India's long-held idea of strategic autonomy. Modi used the tension with America to make a pivot back towards China. But will this smart political game actually work, or will it cause more problems and leave India alone in the end? 7. Friends again. The long silence between India and China finally ended. In late 2024, a big step happened. Both countries agreed on new rules for soldiers at their border. This helped calm down difficult areas like Depsang Plains. It was a careful move to stop more problems. Soon after, Prime Minister Modi of India and President Xi Jinping of China met in Russia. It was their first important talk in 5 years. They both said they wanted to reset their relationship. They agreed their differences should not ruin everything. Then, in 2025, a new catalyst changed things. Donald Trump became president of the United States again. He put new, heavy tariffs on Indian goods. This made India rethink its friendships. China saw this moment as a chance to improve their ties with India. This situation gave India a political reason to talk to China. Many people in India had been angry with China.
But with new challenges from America, India needed to find other partners. In August 2025, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited New Delhi. This visit was important. They agreed to restart direct flights and make getting visas easier. Old border markets would also reopen. A very important agreement was the return of the holy pilgrimage to Kailash Manasarovar in Tibet. This trip was deeply missed by many Indian families. Later that month, Prime Minister Modi visited China for the first time in 7 years. He landed in Tianjin. Modi and Xi met again. Xi used the idea of a dragon-elephant tango, meaning India and China could work together. Modi said India saw China as a partner, not a rival. He made it clear that no other country would influence their relationship. These meetings brought great hope. Families separated for years felt relief. Business owners who had faced difficulties saw new possibilities. They had waited a long time for this moment. The leaders smiled and shook hands, making many promises. But the big question remained: would the planes actually fly? Or were these just hopeful words on paper? 8. Planes in the sky. On October 26, 2025, a special plane took off. It was an Indigo flight from Kolkata, India, heading to Guangzhou, China. This flight marked the end of a very long silence in the skies. For 1,681 days, no direct commercial passenger planes had flown between these two big countries. The passengers on this first flight felt a huge sense of relief. Business travelers could finally fly directly for work. Students could go home easily. Families who had been apart for years could see each other again without long, expensive trips. This restored connection was very important for millions of ordinary people in both India and China. It meant that life could start to feel normal again after a long, abnormal time. However, the return of flights did not mean all problems were gone. The conclusive end to the flight ban was a big step, but a hard truth remained. Tens of thousands of soldiers from both countries were still facing each other. They stood on high mountains along the border, watching with suspicion. Many new roads, bunkers, and military camps had been built there. These structures were permanent. They showed that neither side was ready to fully back down. The main dispute about the borderland was still not solved. Even with new talks, some areas called buffer zones still kept Indian soldiers from patrolling parts of the land they felt was theirs. These issues made the future of peace very fragile. The planes flying again showed a new way forward. It was a step towards solving problems. Both countries needed each other for trade and for people to connect. But this was not yet a full reconciliation.
The future of their relationship would still be a difficult path. Do you think this newly opened airspace will lead to lasting peace, or is it just a temporary pause before the next major conflict? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.